Hello and welcome to the Vicar's Wife's Frugal Life. My name is Rhiannon, I am your host. There are no other hosts, it is just me. Before we start, I'm going to put a massive caveat in that I am not a financial advisor, an accountant, nor am I in any way, other shape or form qualified to give you any financial advice. So if anything here sparks something off in you and you think that's a great idea, then before you act on it, please go and do your own research. I'll include loads of links to all my sources down below in the comments. At the moment I'm just pointing at my carpet, but there will be a comment box below. But please do your own research because I am just a ranty woman on the internet sitting in my bedroom talking about money. Today I'm going to talk about claiming universal credit and about all sorts of other benefits that you may be eligible for both as an employed person and a self-employed person. So I'm going to try and bust some jargon, but I also need you to get accustomed to the jargon as well, because you're going to find it, if you are making claims, that some of this jargon is going to get thrown at you. A few days ago I posted on my Instagram account a load of jargon busting for acronyms that a lot of the Department of Work and Pensions and also HMRC use. So if you go onto my Instagram account, I am at the Vicar's Wife's Frugal Life. On Instagram, you'll be able to have a look at those. It's also on Facebook and on Twitter, where I am at VWFL88. All right, today we're going to talk about universal credit and all sorts of other benefits that you might be eligible for. Step one, I need you to really look after your mental health at this time. There's a lot of shame around money and you may be thinking, why didn't I have a rainy day fund? Why didn't I save for this? This is not a rainy day. This is a global pandemic, okay? So it's really important that you're kind to yourself around this right now. You are not going to do yourself any favours if you go down a shame spiral. So be kind to yourself. Please reach out and find a money buddy. So that's someone that you feel that you can speak openly about money with. If you're not used to talking about money, it will feel a little bit of a wrench at first. When I started talking about money with people, I know I found it really difficult and really awkward. And now I never stop talking about it. And I enjoy making other people feel really difficult and really awkward. I don't actually enjoy it, but part of dispelling the shame around it is talking about it more. So that's the first thing. Please find someone, or even if it's a group of girlfriends, guy friends, or non-binary friends, that you can talk with about money. And finally, if you feel really alone and you just feel really desperate, please give the Samaritans a call. They are on the number 116123. That is 116123. There we go. I even did it in finger numbers for you. Right, Rhiannon, we've been here for ages and you haven't actually told me about a single benefit I'm eligible for. I know, but it is really important that you look after your mental health, okay? Because you will feel frustration, anger, sadness and melancholy at points during the process, but I need you to remain calm and to keep breathing. As far as my research and sources can tell me, this information is correct as of this evening of Saturday the 28th of March. It may be out of date by Sunday the 29th of March 2020. Honestly, things are changing so fast now. I am having real trouble keeping up. It's like a full-time job, honestly. Yes. And the final tiny thing before you get all of that really juicy information is that my sources are all in the box below, which is not just my carpet that I'm currently pointing at, feeling very silly, but all the sources will be there. And the other thing is, I've been really fortunate that I've had two anonymous people from the Department of Work and Pensions who have agreed to have conversations with me, as well as lots of people who have actually claimed benefits either historically or recently. So I have had some first primary sources, I guess you'd call them. Would you call them that, Vicar? Yes, I think that's probably correct. He's standing behind, pepping me on for this one because I'm very nervous about this video. Final tiny thing, I promise this is the last one. I am making this video not as an endorsement of the current universal credit system or indeed of any of the other benefits that are currently being offered. I do not believe all of them, if indeed any of them, are fit for purpose, and me making this video is not endorsing any of them. I am really sorry that so many people have slipped through the net, especially during this corona crisis, and to be honest, since universal credit was rolled out, and I'm really sorry about that. Please don't shoot the messenger. Give me a thumbs up for being brave for just making this video. Anyway, I promise we're going to get started right now. Do you find yourself employed? Are you paying PAYE? So PAYE means pay as you earn, and that means that you've got a sort of a boss, an employer that you're working for, maybe it's a business you're working for, and they pay you through payroll, right? And you pay your tax that way. That's all that PAYE means. It's the contrast between that and what self-employed people do, which is fill out an annual tax return. So if you are an employee, paying PAYE, these things will be relevant for you. Self-employed people, I'm going to get to you. I'm self-employed myself, so do not think I've forgotten you. I'll get to you in a minute. So firstly, there is the new furlough system. So if you're working for a company and you can't currently work, say you're working in hospitality and there's no one to be hospitable to right now because everyone's at home and you're not permitted to work because your industry has been shut down, then your company can put you on furlough. Now, this doesn't cost the company any money at all, but it means you can receive 80% of your salary up to and including £2,500 per month, which is brilliant. The state pays it, so it doesn't cost the company anything. The company, if they're feeling generous, can top it up to 100%, which means they'd give you 20% of your salary. So then you'd be able to sit at home twiddling your thumbs on 100% of your salary. But even if all you're eligible for is the 80% from the state, it doesn't cost the business anything, and it's a good thing. The reason the government are doing it and the reason the Department of Work and Pensions has rolled this out is because otherwise lots of people would be losing their jobs or just removing themselves from the economy completely, which would turn to a total economic collapse, which would be a disaster. So please don't think by accepting furlough that you're somehow sort of like twisting the system. The government wants you to have that money, okay? The state wants you to have it. Otherwise, economic collapse, disaster, we don't want that. They want you to keep spending money and keep being part of the economy, okay? Now, if you've recently been made redundant, and I mean quite recently, then especially if it's been to do with coronavirus, please go back to the company and say, can you hire me back and put me on furlough? Again, Martin Lewis from Money Saving Expert is telling everyone to do this, so please strongly consider that. I'll put a link down to his Twitter video about that because it was really informative, and love Martin Lewis, don't we all? Right, so that is the furlough scheme. That's really good if you're an employee. It's not going to work for you if you are self-employed, but if you're a mixture of PAYE and self-employed, you could always apply for the furlough for the PAYE part of you, the employed bit, okay? The next thing we're going to talk about is statutory sick pay. Now, excuse me if I do look down at my notes at any point. There are, as you can tell, a lot of numbers coming up at the moment, and I don't want to give you any false information. So, statutory sick pay, you are eligible for it if you are an employee and you earn over £118 a week. Okay, that can be £118 a week on average, but it has to be an average at least of £118 a week. It doesn't matter if it's full-time or part-time, it's the 118 that counts, all right? You are not eligible for this if you are self-employed. There's something else for you and we'll get to that, promise. Okay, so when you apply for statutory sick pay, their government is actually supporting small businesses with 250 or fewer employees at the moment to help pay for their statutory sick pay, but please look into applying for it. I think it's about £94 a week, and you can claim it from the first day of your illness now, not from day 4. It used to be day 4, but from the 13th of March of this year the government have rolled it out now that actually you can claim from day 1 instead of day 4, and you can claim up to 28 days under that. And it also counts if you're in isolation with coronavirus symptoms, or if you're in isolation because of other members of your household having symptoms. Okay, so statutory sick pay, otherwise known as SSP. Those are the things that are available to you if you are employed right now. Obviously, universal credit, if you are now unemployed, will be available to you, and we'll get to that in a moment, but I'm going to start some of the self-employed, the sort of slightly more quick-fire things that you may be eligible for in the UK benefit system. The first benefit you may be eligible for as a self-employed person, so if you fill in one of those nice annual tax returns every year, don't you just love it? I love doing mine. God, I hate my tax return. I like budgeting. Hate doing my tax return. What can you do? But I do it, and I'm very honest on it. Thank you very much. So here we go. You are eligible for potentially ESA, contribution-based ESA. What does that mean? Contribution-based ESA is when you've been paying national insurance for, and I quote, a minimum of 2 to 3 years. Does that mean 2 or 3 years? I don't know. But go and have a look and see if you're eligible for it. So please have a look at that. That is if you are sick yourself or if you're in isolation because of someone in your household having coronavirus symptoms. So you can now claim for day 1 of your illness instead of day 8. So that again is the government trying to encourage people to stay home who are self-employed, instead of saying, oh, go on, go out to work, because actually they want us to stay home. So that's why that's come in. Make the most of the ESA that is available to you. Remember that you have to be under state pension age and that you have to have been paying national insurance for 2 to 3 years. Why didn't they just say 2 or 3 years? I don't know. But that's the rules. That's what they've written on all the websites. Don't blame the messenger. Please don't shoot me. The second benefit, and the most exciting one if you are eligible for it, but the most devastating one if you are ineligible, is the self-employed income support system, which Rishi Sunak announced on Thursday, which is essentially the self-employment grant that has been promised to people in June. Now, what do you need to be eligible for this? Okay, again, I don't necessarily agree with any of these things. I'm just telling you what has currently been rolled out, and I will do an updated video on SEISS, the self-employment grant, as it's being called colloquially. Difficult one to say that, isn't it? Easier to write down. So the self-employment grant, more and more information is coming out about this all the time. Please sit tight at the moment. HMRC are desperate for you not to contact them. Do not contact them at the moment. They are totally overwhelmed. If you are eligible for it, what they're currently saying, current advice, this is the 28th of March, it may have changed by tomorrow, but the current advice is please don't phone them or try and contact them about this. If you are eligible, they will contact you. Sure. If they haven't contacted you in a few weeks, maybe you can phone them up. But anyway, you didn't hear that here. They will give you up to 80% of your last 3 years tax returns. They'll take the average of your last 3 tax returns, and then they'll give you essentially 3 months of that and 80% of your profits. I know that's about as clear as mud, but we'll come back to it. So are you eligible for this? Number 1, your annual profits have to be under £50,000. Yep, if you earn £50,001 in profits, then you are ineligible. I'm really sorry. Again, I do not make the rules. That's just what they've said currently. The second thing is you have to have submitted a tax return in the year 1819. So you don't have to have submitted tax returns for the 2 years previously necessarily if you weren't self-employed then, but you have to have submitted that tax return to be eligible for this grant. I know that leaves loads of people who've recently become self-employed up the creek without a paddle. Again, I'm devastated for you, but I'm crossing every finger and fibre of my being that something else will be rolled out in the next few weeks to support those people who've slipped through this net. The tax returns they will be taking into account when they are calculating how much you are eligible for in this grant are the years 2016 to 17, 2017 to 18 and 2018 to 2019, those 3 years. If you've not submitted your tax return yet for 2018, 2019, which you should have probably done by now, don't worry, don't panic, no shame, brush it off, take a big breath. You've got until the 23rd of April, which is also Shakespeare's birthday and St. George's Day and Shakespeare's death day. All sorts of facts coming for you here, but you've got until the 23rd of April this year to submit your 18 to 19 tax return for you to be eligible for this grant. So please get on it if you haven't already done that. So what they'll do, they'll take those 3 years and then they'll take the mean, which is a kind of average. Hello maths GCSE. They'll take the mean and then basically they'll divide it by 12 and then whatever number that is, they will pay you 80% of it up to and including £2,500. So let's do the maths on that. If you earned £24,000 3 years consecutively, I'm doing round numbers because it's easy, that are divisible by 12. So 24 times 3 is, go mathematicians sitting right there.
72.
£72,000, okay? 72,000 divided by 3 is?
24,000.
24, look at that, easy maths. 24 divided by 12 is?
2.
2. So let's say your monthly income on average over the last 3 years is £2,000. What is 80% of £2,000? £1,600. So they would pay you £1,600 for 3 months, and that grant would be added up and would arrive in June. And what's 1,600 times 3, please?
4,800.
4,800. So you would receive a grant of 4,800. I got a bit of a bead on during that, but have a look in the box below and I'll show you the maths that I used to work it out, and I'll probably use numbers that are different because very few self-employed people earn a regular income like that. Wouldn't it be nice sometimes? But that's not what we have. Anyway, I will be making another video about that soon, but please don't apply to HMRC about it now. They are saying that they're going to get in contact with you, all right? So hold tight, you should get an email, and if you haven't had one in a while, yeah. The other thing to note is the money is not expected to come through until June. And I know a lot of people will have cash flow problems until then. We're going to talk about that. Also, I'd slightly mention here, they say June, but they say they're going to start making payments from June. And I don't know, but at the moment, the world is in slight chaos. So I think it's no bad thing if you do have some savings and you're able to live off those, to eke out as long as possible and think maybe what would happen if you couldn't get that money until July or even August. I'm not saying that's going to happen, I'm just thinking let's prepare for the worst and hope for the best, all right? So let's say you are now unemployed and that the self-employed income support system is also not working for you, or even that it will work for you but you've got no money to tide you over until that grant comes through. Now we're going to have to talk about universal credit and how we're going to make that work for you. I know a lot of people feel a little bit overwhelmed by the idea of universal credit and it's got a lot of bad press. But I want you to really stay positive throughout this because I'm going to talk you through the process as it stands at the moment, because it's a little bit different to even how it was a week ago. My research is having to catch up on a daily basis. Okay, firstly, please, when you get through to the people on the other end of the phone, please be kind to them. They are really, really short-staffed at the moment because a lot of people are at home sick or isolating or are vulnerable themselves who are not able to come into work. Bear that in mind, and bear in mind that they're working round the clock to get this sorted, and they have an unprecedented number of applications for universal credit. I think it was 500,000 in the last week alone. It's absolutely bonkers. Never seen anything like it. They really are working around the clock to help you. So please, even if you've been on hold for a very long time, please be kind to them. What is universal credit? Universal credit is a monthly benefit from the state to you to help you cover your living costs. Okay. Second question, am I eligible? Great question. Well, you are eligible if you are on a low income or you're out of work, if you're over 18. Some people are eligible that are 16 and 17, and you'll have to read about that. I'll put a link to it down below. So over 18, if you're under the state pension age, you and your partner have to have less than £16,000 worth of savings between you, and anything over £6,000 will mean that you have a deduction in the benefits that you're eligible for, and you have to live in the UK. Those are the main things that you need to know about for eligibility. Remember, if you live with your partner, you have to declare that you live with them, and their income and their savings will be taken into account, even if you're not married, all right? So be really clear about that. And if you move in with them, you also have to declare that. How much money do I get? Well, that totally depends, and I know that's a really frustrating answer, but you really need to have a look at a benefits calculator, and I'd recommend looking at least 2 to see a ballpark of what you might be eligible for and if you're eligible at all. I'll put some benefits calculators links in the box down below, but it really is a case of how long is a piece of string. Lots of things will make a difference if you have a kid, whereabouts in the UK you live, and what the housing costs are there, etc, etc, and if you have any savings. There are so many things and so many variables, it's just not something anyone can answer, and I know that's really frustrating, but please go and use the benefits calculators and just have a gander at what you might be eligible for. What is the application process? Well, this is probably the most complicated part of universal credit, so please bear with me as I'm going to have to go step by step and keep referring to my notes to do this. So, number 1, you have to apply online. If you're not good with computers, then there's a separate system for you if there's any reason that you have any access requirements around that. Well, I'm guessing as you are experiencing this video on YouTube, you probably don't fall in that bracket, so I'll put a link to that down below, but here we are. So you need to apply online. I'll put the link of the application below. You need to complete the application and press submit. And at the point that you press submit, that means that your application is in progress. Your assessment has started. And in theory, your benefits will arrive in your bank account 5 weeks from that click of the submit. Now, when you are submitting your details, you'll need things like your bank account and you'll need an identity document to get verified. At the moment, a lot of people are having real problems getting through the system, and they're waiting in queues just online on websites for hours and hours and hours to get their ID verified. If you are having huge problems getting it verified and it's going to delay your application, there is a box you can tick that says, I can't verify online. I'm not saying that everyone should tick this box, but please try and do it online, and if you can't, tick that box, and then when you press submit, you should now be able to get into your journal. So write a note in your journal, write a note to your case managers and the work coaches. They will be able to see it and say, I have tried applying online to get my documents verified, but I just can't get through and I'm really struggling. At some point when someone calls you, they will then go through your identification documents and talk you through that process. But I know that's a real problem for people, and someone I spoke to today who works closely with case managers said that that was an idea because I know that people are facing huge frustration and not even being able to submit their initial application because they're not getting through on the website. Normally, after you'd finished your online application, you'd get on the phone and call up straight away, and they will tell you to do that in your to-do list on your on the portal, on your journal, and all of that sort of malarkey that's going on. It'll be more clear when you see it, and we'll get to it in a moment. But at the moment, depending on where your job centre is, some people are just receiving a call automatically. It may not come for days or even maybe a week or two afterwards. But if you press submit, please rest assured that your assessment has started being assessed, if that makes sense, okay? So please don't worry about it too much. The process has started and someone will get back to you, especially if you've still got some things that are not sort of working out. Now, your first phone call with the job centre essentially is going to be from someone who is a case manager. Now, a case manager is not your work coach, that's someone totally different, but the case manager is going to have a conversation with you and they're going to make sure that you've got no blocks in between you and getting your benefits. So if you need to verify any documents, submit any extra information or submit any proof of things like your tenancy agreement, your council tax, anything like that, they will help you through that and remove those blocks so you can get your benefits as quick as possible. Again, please be nice to these people when you finally get on the phone to them. They're really overworked at the moment, so please be kind. So this is where things get a little bit more tricky if you're self-employed. When you're employed, or have previously been employed, it's much easier for the job centre and the DWP to pull down your previous tax information and your employment history from HMRC and figure out how much you've been earning and what tax you've been paying and who you are and all that sort of thing. But when you're self-employed, things are a little bit more different. So that means that you quite often have to then be referred to a work coach who will specialise in self-employed people. However, because the system is so overloaded at the moment, I do know both from someone who works with case managers who I've spoken to and other people who've also applied in the last week or two, they've actually had a senior manager come through, so that it means the case manager who you're on the phone to, who's helping you get your claim through, they then are able to tick the box that says that you're self-employed and that you don't have to speak to a work coach before the process starts, essentially. So that's a really, really good thing. Again, be really gentle and kind, but maybe inquire as to whether that's possible, because self-employed people are a little bit more of an anomaly within the system and sometimes people don't quite know what to do with them. So be gentle, but maybe inquire as to whether a senior manager can tick that box for you and get that okayed. It used to be that the person claiming universal credit had to have a face-to-face appointment in the job centre before they were eligible for universal credit in order to verify all their documents. But actually now, currently, as of today, what's happening is that they're just verifying them over the phone, which obviously means that they're not asking for copies currently and they're not asking for you to scan them in and send it, so they're taking it on trust. But remember, before you start fabricating any numbers, not that you would ever do that, that they can check this at any point. Okay, so make sure the numbers you're giving are genuine and correct. The onus is on you for that one. So when you log into your Universal Credit portal, there'll be 3 sections, and there'll be the home page, the to-do list, and your journal. If you are looking for an advance, and we'll talk a bit more in detail about advances in a minute, but if you're talking about an advance, it's under the home list. So after you've had the conversation with your case manager, in theory, you can then go on the homepage and look for the advance part and ask for an advance, because we know that it can take a minimum of 5 weeks and beyond for your benefits to actually come through, for that universal credit payment to come through. And you may not know how much it's going to be even until 2 or 3 days before the money actually hits your account. So please be prepared for that. You could be in the dark for over a month as to how much they're even going to offer you. Again, I'm not endorsing the system, I'm just telling you what's currently happening. So, the advance. You could be offered a number, and that is a loan. It's a loan against any money they give you in the future. It is repayable, and the maximum period you can repay it over is a year. So, let's say you take an advance of £600 to tide you over until your benefits come through. That £600 then would be repayable, and the minimum amount you could pay per month against your benefits would be £50, okay? And remember, the benefits and the universal credit is really designed to be just covering the very basics, if that, let's face it. So please think really carefully about that before you take the advance, and do a budget. I've got loads of videos on budgeting. Do a budget and see what the absolute minimum, if you really have to take an advance, what it's going to be. Normally I would say do not touch it with a barge pole. If you can, in any way, shape or form, avoid it, please avoid it, because it is a debt, and if you've got a very small income about to come through universal credit, it could be really catastrophic, and there are loads of situations in which it's led people down a really dark path. So that's my cautionary tale for you. But if you do need the advance, you can get it, and it should be in your account within 1 to, let's say, 5 working days. Again, in theory. If you're not able to access an advance, if there's not one accessible to you right now, don't panic, and maybe don't call them because it's really difficult to get through, but do write a note in your journal and write the question. People are reading journals and answering them at a much higher rate than they can answer the phone, because obviously it's quicker to answer those questions than to have a phone call with someone. So please, please, please use the journal if you have any questions. Once you're in the system, quite often at the moment I'm being told that you'll get a much quicker response, so that's really to be encouraged. So now you've done your initial application and you've submitted it, you've had a conversation with someone on the phone, with a case manager, and the next thing that's going to happen is you're going to have a conversation with a work coach. Now, this conversation would have normally happened in person, and you would have normally sat down and talk about the claimant commitment. Now, the claimant commitment is a legal document between you and between the state who are going to give you money. And you say that I will do things that might be look for work for 35 hours a week, declare any income that I receive, go to all job interviews that I may be offered, take jobs that I am offered. Those might be some commitments that you're being held to. And the state says, if you do those things, we will give you universal credit payments. So that is what your claimant commitment is. When you're speaking to your work coach, especially if you're self-employed, it will be a bit more complicated, because they will give you a bit more of a grilling on the nitty-gritty of your business, how long you've been doing it for, has it been profitable previously, that sort of thing. The minimum income floor is quite complicated, but at the moment it's been totally removed, so don't worry your little head about it right now, because it's made me go a bit cross-eyed trying to understand it, but it has been removed now, so don't worry about it. So they will talk to you about your claimant commitment. After you've had that conversation with them, you need to go back online and you need to accept the claimant commitment. That's really important, because until you've accepted that, they will not release your benefits down the line. In theory, you could have that conversation with them 2 days before your benefit is due to be paid, and you'll still be paid the benefit. So don't worry if you've not had that conversation really early on, that it's going to take 5 weeks from that conversation. No. What I've been told is that it's 5 weeks from the initial assessment period, which starts on the day that you submit the online form. So that's good news, some good news in the mire of bad news currently surrounding us. Okay, so that's reassuring as well. So the work coach, you should hear from them normally within a few days. At the moment, it might be up to a few weeks. And again, this might change. It may become longer and longer. Who knows? I just don't know. I'm just giving you the information that's currently being passed around the Department of Work and Pensions. Oh, I should add that normally you have a meeting face-to-face with your work coach every 2 weeks, so that's every fortnight, and it's really, really important that you go to that meeting. But for the next 3 months, from the 19th of March up to, I guess, the 19th of June, is that 3 months? Maths? Maths. They will not require you to have a face-to-face meeting unless there are really exceptional circumstances, and I can't really imagine what those might be. So if you've got a kind of bog standard case going on, nothing exciting happening, you'll just be having phone meetings with them. So that's good news, and at least you don't have to travel. So that's really good. A few things to mention as well about your meeting with your work coach. If there is a reason you can't work at the moment because you're isolating, please try and make sure that you have a doctor's note for whatever medical or underlying health condition you have. If you're pregnant, that should be more straightforward. But please make sure you have that, because that might be important. You'll have to submit information about that on your initial online assessment. So yeah, just bear that in mind, that you might have to produce a note. Okay, so let's recap. You've done your online assessment, you've had a call with a case manager, you've had a follow-up call with a work coach, and now you're in the system and waiting for your benefits to arrive. Well, what have you got to do? You've got to fill in that journal. So you have to, whatever they've told you are the claimant commitments, you have to tell them that you are searching for work or advertising for work, or whatever they've asked you to do. You have to fill in that journal and tell them what you're doing. I have heard a funny story today about people that use it as a proper diary, like woke up at 7, did yoga from 8 till 9, had a cup of tea, went to the library to use the computer, searched for jobs for 3 hours, phoned my friend Kevin, then went for lunch, and things like that. You can do that if you want, and apparently they find that quite funny, but realistically you have to write down the things that you're doing with relating to looking and actively searching for work. So if you have any job interviews, if you're offered any interviews, obviously those will be online right now. And I realise as a self-employed person, you're like, but my industry has just shut down. Please just work with them and do what they tell you to do. At the moment, I think they're probably going to be more realistic about what is and is not possible. There is a global pandemic, people. Okay, but please fill in the journal. A top tip from someone who I know who's been claiming benefits on and off for years, they say, please fill in the journal. And if you have any questions, ask them via the journal. That way they don't have to call you up. So if you find that call really stressful, you don't have to have that conversation. Okay, so hopefully that's useful. Oh, a massive thing I have forgotten. Please make sure that your phone accepts calls from unknown or blocked numbers with no caller ID. This has been flagged up today as a problem by a case manager who works for DWP. She said to me that sometimes people don't get the phone calls because their phone just blocks those calls automatically. Bear in mind that the call from the case manager or even the work coach could come from an unknown number. So bear that in mind. Also bear in mind that there are lots of scammers out there at the moment trying to raid your bank account, but just exercise caution, but please make sure your phone isn't going to block those calls, because that could be really disastrous. Word of warning. It's possible, if you don't keep up with your journal and if you don't adhere to your claimant commitments, remember it's a legal document, that you could be sanctioned, which means your benefits are either reduced or in some cases removed completely for a period of time. So please adhere to the claimant commitments. I know it must be really infuriating to have to do that right now, especially if your industry just doesn't exist, but please stick to it, otherwise they could take away your money, okay? I think that's a huge amount of information that I've just thrown at you, but I hope some of it helps and some of it might make the process a little bit clearer or a little bit less daunting. Please remember that once you've clicked submit, the process has started. I'm sorry I've had to make this video, but I hope it's helpful for some of you in some way, shape or form. Please, if you have any questions, let me know what they are in the comments below. Please give me a thumbs up for being brave and at least trying to help, because I'm really worried about getting loads of hate for doing this. it is really complicated and things are changing by the day, so keep checking in. I am at the moment doing a drop-in at 7 o'clock every evening on my Instagram, which I put the details to below. So if you have any questions, I will try my best to answer them in the current climate. Also, keep checking Martin Lewis and Money Saving Expert, because he really is a money expert and he always has his ear to the ground on things. I hope things get better, and I know they will get better, so hold on in there. And hopefully you'll be okay. I know you'll be okay, okay? Keep positive and write your gratitude lists. Loads of love. Bye.